How's it going? My name is Brent from Encore PPF and Tint, and today we are going to be working on a GLC 43 AMG. So we're going to be installing paint protection film on this front bumper, and then we're going to do these couple little, probably these little extra trim pieces here as well, maybe even these guys here. You know, this actually came over from a body shop. So if you are going into the paint protection film industry, you know, another way to get some business is to go around and talk to all the body shops. As long as you need to do good work and you need to be reliable. So they need somebody that they can just go, hey, you know, I've got a couple door edges I need to get done because the car needs to be returned to the customer. This happens a lot. And so you need to be kind of available for those types of things. So if you have a location and they can just bring and drop things off, you know, you can get some extra work out of body shops. And the great thing about body shops is nobody's going to complain about price because the insurance is paying for it. And I'm not saying gouge them, but what I am saying is that you can charge your regular pricing on stuff like this. So and you know, you don't have to deal with the customer, so that's great. I mean, love my customers, but you know, when you're doing something like this and it just shows up and you're like, do the job, give it back to the body shop, collect your money, that's pretty awesome. So let's go ahead and get started on this. So whenever I'm going to be pulling this off or taking this off in order to put it on the vehicle, you always want to come and check everything. So because I'm going to be pulling this direction, you know, things like this when they go back up are going to be kind of hard to pull off. So I like to wet some of those down. Now this one isn't so important, but come check this out. Right here, if you were pulling this way, you could actually grab right here and tear the material because this part isn't going to want to come up. So that could tear that direction. So I like to take these areas, pull them down. I mean, just like that, I could tear that right now. So that's something you want to go ahead and release and then wet underneath. The other thing that I do sometimes is I'll just take it and fold it over like that and lay it on itself. But the rest of this looks fine. There is a little jog right here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do this part. And that's plenty good for this one. And then I'm going to pull it out like that. And then I'll take it and grab this with my hand and then finish pulling this off. And then just let it hang there. And then when we get over here, I can take this part here and attach it to the vehicle. Sometimes you get, you know, if you have a real slippy solution, it'll just kind of start sliding off the bumper. So you just want to keep an eye out for that. This one seems to be holding pretty good. And most of it is, you know, it's pretty simplistic. It's a pretty simple pattern. So it's laying on there real good and holding just fine. Sometimes you'll have parts that are like hanging off and then they'll be heavy and they'll help slide the material down. But this seems to be working out real good. All right, so with this kit here, we're gonna have, this is in two pieces. So it's gonna have this top section and then this section here will round up into here a little and then cover all of this all the way across. So we've got two parts. And where we're gonna go ahead and start is going to be underneath, going up here underneath the headlight, and then we're gonna keep an eye on these two relief cuts here for wrapping in. And that's going to be how we figure out placement on this one. All right, so get it broken loose there. We'll get this lined up. So we're going to just go right up to the edge there. And then this is hanging over that way a little bit, so we are going to have to pull it back this direction, but let's get some of this down first here. And actually I'm going to go ahead and make an adjustment and try to get that to line up a little bit better. Okay, so something like that looks really good. So right there. And then you also want to make sure that these are just barely past that edge, the relief cuts. Okay, great. We'll go ahead and squeegee these down. You see it keeps wanting to pop up. So actually I'm gonna get some tack solution, but I don't think we're gonna need it right here, but I'm gonna get some anyway because we are gonna need it during this install. Okay. All right, I'm pulling this up a little here because it's getting a little pre-tacking going, and this started to go up and just barely hang over that edge, and I'd prefer not to have to trim that off, and so we're gonna go ahead and pull down a little bit to get that to line back up and then squeegee a little bit more out there. Okay, and then let's get this. It's looking pretty good. So let's go up just a tiny bit with it. It's about, you know, like a 1/16 or so of an inch. Not much. Okay, and I got, oh, you know, I think that's in the paint. Yep, I did feel that earlier. You can see that little dot right there, hopefully. I mean, hopefully you can't, because then nobody will ever see it, but it is in the paintwork right there. Okay, so it was important that we got this part stuck down before we did this little stretch up to here, because otherwise it's going to put more tension here, and this is really going to want to keep popping back up. So the more tension you have going away from this, the more this is going to want to pop up. So it's good to get that part in first and then do the rest of your stretching if possible. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and leave this here and work this part down. This is going to need more stretching than that part, and so it's easier, or it's better just to continue on this direction on this install here, because there won't be any stretching here. We can just lay that right down and then move on from there. Right here we're going to immediately need stretching, and if we let this cure right here for too long, when we give this a little tug, it's actually going to leave a little stretch line in the material or in the adhesive there. So let's make sure that we're not tacking up at all to this. And then just line everything up. Actually, it's not much of a stretch, is it? We're just gonna have to push these fingers out. So we've got it in place there. Just make sure it doesn't move around, and make sure you're not really hanging over the edge there. And we'll go ahead and squeegee this out. Okay, so we're coming straight across there, and then we're gonna need a little bit of stretch down to get rid of some of these fingers. And hopefully we need a little stretch, and we do. That's good. Okay, so let's get this pushed out first. All right, and then I'm gonna have to go grab my tack solution so that we can get these fingers here to stay down. You can keep going over them, and eventually they may stick, but that's where tack solution comes into play, so it just sticks right now. Okay, so we'll get some tack in this edge. And we'll go ahead and squeegee this stuff up and out. And then what I'm doing is holding on that very edge. So I'm not stopping on the face of the bumper, I'm stopping after I go past. And then I'm holding on that very edge with the squeegee. And what that's gonna do is the part where the pressure is right here on the edge is gonna get a lot of pressure, and that's gonna make it tack really quick so that we don't have so many problems with those little fingers wanting to pop back up. All right, let's double check for making sure we don't have any pre-tacking. I'm gonna go ahead and throw in a little bit of tack right there. Let's bring it down. Okay, and so then what we're gonna do, we need about 1/8 of an inch or a little more of stretch. I'm gonna hold about right here in the middle so that most of our stretch is gonna be in this area, because if I pull from down here, we're gonna get a lot of stretch in this area too, but we don't need any stretch there. All needs to be up here. Okay, and then I'm gonna squeegee this out because we do have the tack solution in there. So those areas with the tack solution, you want to get those squeegeed out first so that they don't pre-tack and you trap moisture or air pockets in there. All right, and then we'll come up here and we'll go ahead and squeegee all this out. Okay, and then we've got some fingers here that we're gonna have to deal with. And then we'll deal with this parking sensor. All right, so right here, I'll go ahead and put some tack solution in there. Put a mist on that, and then we'll squeegee this stuff out. Okay, now we're gonna do a swipe and hold. So just over, I'm pushing this, putting the pressure right on this body line here. Because even if you, like, let's say you squeegee to here and you put some pressure on there, if you did leave a mark in the adhesive, you're not gonna be able to tell on that body line. At some point I should do a video and just show you what it looks like when you stop in the material, because you do leave a line in it. I'll have to write that down somewhere. All right, so now let's go ahead and trim around this let's go ahead and trim around this parking sensor before it sits there for too long and then causes a distortion in the adhesive. Because what can happen is that the area where it's stuck and the area where it's not stuck, if there's any tension there, and then you relieve that tension by trimming out around this, it'll actually kind of shrink back down to that line, and then you'll have a different stretch here and here, because this will not have as much stretch on it as this area does, and it'll actually leave a distortion all the way around this parking sensor. So let's go ahead and trim that. Sorry, I get kind of quiet when I'm trimming. Just really paying attention. And I actually was falling down kind of in between the bumper and the, so I actually cut through the material a little bit there, because I was actually kind of riding like in between the parking sensor and the bumper. Okay, and then now we want to go ahead and squeegee this out. I put a little tack in there. Okay, and I've got a little bit here where I got off my cut a little bit when I lifted up, because I started this way and came this way and then I went back this way. So I didn't follow the exact same line right there, but we're not going to worry about that right now. I'll wait for this to cure a bit more and I'll come back and pull that off. Okay, let's go on out to the middle. And we're gonna pull this all back and eliminate the pre-tacking. Okay. All right, so now for this part, what we want to go ahead and do is, because this has already started to cure right here, we want to go ahead and get ourselves a new line to stretch from. So we're going to come down, let's see here, just going to come about a ½ inch or so up to an inch. I mean, you can come as far as you want, but we're just going to squeegee out a little bit more. That way we're not stretching right from the area that's really stuck down. Now we're stretching from a new, like a softer area that just got squeegeed out. Okay, now I'm getting crazy though. We gotta get moving here across this bumper, so we'll come back to all that. Okay, so now that we've squeegeed out and we've got a new area to stretch from, we're gonna go ahead and stretch over to this area here so that we know that all this is gonna line up really well. That tells us exactly how much stretch we need out here. Because if you start working from there over this direction, there's a solid possibility that you're going to stretch too much or too little, and then you're not going to line up here. If you end up with too much material over here because you did too much stretching coming over, that's going to be a problem. So let's get this lined up and get this squeegeed out, and then we'll get the middle squeegeed out. So again, it's basically just like the other side. We're just making sure that this lines up and that these are lining up real well. And you can see that this one's too high, so we need to bring that down a little bit. The material needs to basically tilt like this a little. Okay, so something like that will work real good for these two. And that's looking pretty good right here. Now that's lining up really well. Bring this down just a little bit more. And then we'll go ahead and start squeegeeing this out. Okay, and then again, we're gonna need just a little bit of stretch up. And we'll squeegee that out. Okay, and then actually, because this doesn't need any more stretch, it's just gonna sit here for a moment. And we'll go ahead and get this part down, and then we'll come back and squeegee this out, because I don't want to get a stretch line here when I go to pull this direction. Okay, so we're going to just follow the same procedures we did on the other side. Let's get this lined up along this bottom real well. And so what I'm doing here is with my fingers here, and on my whole hand really, I'm lining up this area, and then I'm using my thumb here to pull up and down on this part to line this up. So that's looking really good right there. That's lined up really well. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and squeegee out just like we did in the center here. So there's not much for fingers there. And then we'll take this stuff up and out. Oh, look at that. We need to fix that. Quite a bit of slip in there today, so, and it's gonna line up real well. Just need to get it aligned correctly. Okay, so there, that looks good. All right, and then we'll take these up and out. They're doing pretty good on this side. The other side was hanging over just a tiny bit, so as we were getting more fingers. But we still have 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, there's a bunch of them. All right, it's basically just like the other side. Okay, and then let's get that dried out so we won't get any fingers coming back up. And you can see there's a little bit of silvering on the edge, and that's because I got all the way up to where it just starts to curl, where the body line is, where it just starts to round back and go underneath the headlight. And that'll do really well with a little bit of heat. That'll stay completely stuck down. We don't have to worry about that coming back up. Now let's see if we can catch this in the camera. There is a tiny little water pocket right here. Can you see that as I go back and forth right there? Hopefully that's visible. And so what we can do with that is squeegee it out right now, which I just did. That water bubble was also small enough that I could have left that in there to dry. So if this had already started to really cure around here, let's say it had been a half hour or so, or any time, like if I got done with all this and went to the center, I wouldn't come back and try to squeegee that out. I would just leave it, and that would have dried out. That wasn't too large. But if you can squeegee it out, that's the best way to go. And how you do that is you put a little bit of extra pressure. So I'm using a pretty solid amount of pressure, and then you're moving really fast. The slower you go, the more chance you have of stopping on the material and leaving the lines in the adhesive, and that water is going to make little crescent shapes as it pops the material up and moves out, and it's going to go like that, and it'll leave all little lines like that as distortions in the adhesive. So if you go really fast, that's the best way to get that water out without leaving the distortions in the adhesive. Okay, let's get moving. Try to explain a lot of stuff, but also need to make sure that in a timely fashion I get all this stuff down. Okay, so this is actually all looking really good. The other side, we did need a little bit more stretch here. This side's not looking like it's going to need the stretch just the same. But we'll go ahead and get this bottom lined up. All the sides are looking really good. And then we'll squeegee this bottom out where we have just put the tack solution in. Okay, and then we'll squeegee this out. And you don't want to squeegee it down and out through the area we just put tack solution in. So you want to take that away from, you know, to the side. Okay, and this, I don't know if you can, if this type of stuff sees up in the camera, but I am going to flip my squeegee over here, and I should have left it and shown it to you. There is imperfection in the paint right there. There's a little dot, and there's a few of them on here. There's one right here, and I felt some more somewhere there. Anyway, what I did for that is, because there is a little dot there sticking out, what's going to happen is the paint protection is going to go from this paint, pop up a little bit, and then go back down, and that's going to leave an air pocket around that. So if it's small enough, you can take a harder part of the squeegee, put good pressure on it, and really get that air out around that little dot and the water out, and it'll actually contour to that better. And then you don't have to worry so much about having a silver circle around that where it's bridging that gap to the top of that dot. Here's another one. And I mean, you know, don't spend too much time on them. That one's not really working just the same, so I'm not going to worry about it. But if you can get it to do that, that's good for you and the body shop and for the customer. You know, aftermarket paint, it's not going to be perfect, for sure. I mean, factory paint's not perfect, so. All right, so these fingers here, just going to take them over the edge and then hold. I usually like to squeegee this stuff out first and then come back over it. That way when I'm coming back this direction, I'm not leaving, there's not a ton of water in there that I have to worry about getting out. It's more about just getting that to lay down and then holding it in place. I'm not using this to so much squeegee all the tack solution out of there. All right, let's get back to this center now. So the only thing I want to do with this before I start squeegeeing it is pull it back, get rid of any of the pre-tacking. All right. Now let's align this. Something like that, which is interesting. It's leaving way too much. There's way too much material here. What I'm going to do now is line this bottom up real well, because I don't want to have to get underneath there and cut that. So I'm going to line that up. Let's pop this up. You can see how it's kind of, the air pocket is like on this side. That means, I don't know how to explain that. It means that this part here is pre-tacking a little bit. The material wants to come back this way. This part is stuck, and so it's creating this air pocket that goes that kind of shape. So watch and see, and then it lays down flat. So what I'm going to do is really pay attention to that bottom edge, and then we're going to squeegee this out, And then what I'm gonna have to do is come back and trim this top part because it's got way too much material hanging over. There's nowhere for that to go. There's only, you know, max 1/4 inch there on the top. And this is a ton of extra. So let's go ahead and make sure that this is lined up on the bottom. It's gonna be really hard to cut that on the bottom. So we definitely don't wanna be trying to do that down there. This is right out in the open. Okay, now that we've got this top part here squeegeed out, that should begin to tack down, and then that should allow us to get a little bit more aggressive and get the rest of this out. Okay, and then we're gonna come across. You can do a slide chomp, although I am finding that here that it wants to kind of pop up, so I am just gonna chomp this down like this. Let's bring in here too. Show you what I'm doing here, different angle on it. Okay, I'm gonna go back this way. You can see I'm making sure that when I do this, it's actually kind of rounding up a little bit onto the face. And that makes sure that I'm getting all the moisture off of the corner there. All right, and then just a slide chomp there to finish it off. Make sure we're pushed all the way down in there. That looks really good. Okay, now we need to get this part to stay down here. Now the only reason I'm turning my squeegee around here is because I want to make sure that I can go all the way in and hit this grill part here. Obviously that isn't gonna do it. Okay, get some tack in here and get all this part here to stick down, get it wrapped over. So this just, we start with a 70% rubbing alcohol, and we mix that to 20% in this container to 80% of water. Then we dilute it down to that. Okay. Now, if you just are installing a kit, you won't have this hanging out around this, but we do remove those from the kits, and then I will cut around that and then wrap this material in. There is a Porsche video, or a video on the front bumper of a Porsche, I think it is, that goes over exactly how we do all of our tow hook covers. Goes over the full process. Okay, I folded it over a little bit on itself right there, so we want to go ahead and lift that up and then re-squeegee that back down. Okay, that looks really good. Double check the corner, make sure we got all the moisture out. Okay, I'll go ahead and start wrapping that down. Okay, and then right here, we're over this bend just a little bit, so I'm gonna dry that out. And then we'll put a little heat on that and get that to stick down before we install this part. Okay, let's wrap that other side, and then we'll get to wrapping this part after we trim it. All right, a little tack in there. And then I'm just gonna go right down this body line and get that to round over a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and chomp that down. Okay. Just kind of running my finger over it. It's kind of hard to see in there because it's kind of dark. So I'm just kind of filling to make sure that I didn't leave any water pockets in there. And if I feel something, normally it's going to be a little bit of a bump. Then I'll go over it again with the squeegee. I can feel the paint protection is coming up a little bit right here. So I'm going to get a little bit of, I'm going to peel it back up just a tiny bit. And we'll get some tack under there. Okay. Great. All right, let's go cut around that other parking sensor and then we will trim this part. Now the reason that I didn't trim this one right away was because it's either not sticking up quite the same or there's something different about it. It's laying down on there much better. It's not protruding as much, so it's actually sticking down right to the edge. So we cut out the other one together. I'm not going to worry about this right now. We're just going to move on to other things. All right, there is a little bit of moisture that's running back down, like right in here, and then right here. So I'm just gonna push that out real quick, and then we'll get to trimming this now. All right, let's see. All right, so it looks like even this could be trimmed a little bit. Now it's really hard to start on an edge like that, so I'm gonna start out here. And I'm going to kind of lay this down into place. Actually, let's see, how do I want to do this? I actually think what I'm going to do, you could just trim this off right here and you know, try to keep an even spacing and a nice straight line all the way across, and that'd be great. The other thing, which I think I want to try, is you could put some tack in here and you can kind of wrap it in, and then we can actually just stuff our blade in between the grill and the bumper and trim it off behind there, and we should be able to cut the whole thing off because we should be able to cut all the way through it. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up in. I mean, look at all that extra. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if the plotter cutter got off and didn't cut on its line, or I don't know. All right, so I can feel when I was coming across with the squeegee on my finger here, because it was rubbing against the panel, I can feel that there's a water pocket right here. So I went ahead and I'm gonna lift it back up, squeegee that out. I'm just gonna double check all this now. There's a little bit more in there right there. So those spots came back up that I squeegeed off the face earlier. So I'm just going to put some tack in there this time. That'll definitely make them stay down. Okay, I'm just squeegeeing down on the face, and then I'm going up over the edge to the top there. All right, so I'm going to start right here in the center, and I'm going to go way back in there. We're going to cut through that material and then bring that over this way. And that should be completely, yeah, okay, great. Okay, then one last squeegee in way back in there to get all the moisture out of the very edge of the material. That edge seems like it's bumping into a little something back in there. There we go. Either that or I just wasn't getting good pressure on it. It's staying down now. Okay, great. Let's work our way up this area here. So we'll get some tack in there. And we'll get this squeegeed in. All right, great. You can see I'm using this part of the squeegee instead of this corner, and that's because there's nothing above, there's nothing on top of this part here. This is very malleable, so it contours incredibly well. Great. Let's do the other side. We'll get you a little bit different angle on that one. Okay, so now this part, there definitely was something going on when it was cutting. I'm not sure what happened here, but this is way too big. That's not going to all tuck back in there. This one seems like okay-ish, although it's still way too long as well. So I'm just going to cut these off here a little bit. Still trying to keep them plenty long that we're not going to see the edge. But we don't need all that excess material back in there. Okay. Now let's get some tack in there. Get this little piece over first, and then get this part over. Okay, great. Let's check this very edge, the corner there for moisture left behind, and then we'll give this a final swipe there. Great. Okay, so I'm just pushing these edges down here where we're going to be bumping this next piece of material into the edge of this material. I'm going to put just a tiny bit of heat on those because I want to make sure that they stay down and we don't have, that way they don't pop back up. That'll just be, you know, that makes it messy when you're trying to bump a piece into it and this piece keeps popping up. All right, so I'm just putting a little bit of heat on it and then pushing that edge down, just in the areas where we're going to be bumping up against it. Same thing over here. It shouldn't take much. I mean, We're still gonna have to go over all these edges again and heat seal them, but just want to make sure that this stays down. Okay, so I'm gonna wipe this off one last time here. And then we'll get our piece of material, lay it on here, and get it all squeeged out into place. It is important when you're taking this off the board there that you make sure and get it wet. Should I flip this over the wrong way? No, that looks right. Okay. You want to make sure that you get all the adhesive wet, because if the adhesive sticks to itself somehow, like if you pull it off the board there and it flaps around and sticks to itself, you're very likely going to take some of the adhesive off. The adhesive is going to stick to one side or the other, and not all of it, but it only takes a little tiny circle of adhesive to stick to one part where you have a bump here and missing adhesive there. So you're going to end up with a silver circle around the adhesive it pulled off, and then the part where there is no adhesive, you're probably going to end up with an air pocket in there that isn't going to be able to stick because there's no adhesive. So make sure you get that adhesive wet down. All right, let's see what we can do here with this area. So we can see back here, that this wants to go, you know, that it's designed to go up to that edge. And then we want it to wrap around and fill in most of this seam. Let's get a little bit of, I'm going to put some more slip in there. I'd put some tack, but I want to be able to bump this edge here. Really, the only place I'm really worried about the edge is right on this part. The rest of this can get really close. It's not going to be so noticeable because it is on a turn there. Okay, so I'm just bumping that into itself there, or bumping it into the other piece, and then I'm pushing it into it so that seam is nice and tight there. And then we'll go ahead and squeegee that out. And then we'll take the rest of this air out going up. Okay. Go and squeegee this out. Keeps popping back up, so let's get a little tack in there. And then we'll just go up a little bit around the corner, get that to stick down, and we'll just keep working our way to the very edge there. Okay, so now we're squeegeed out to right about here. All right, and then from there, we're gonna basically work all this area down until we get about right here. Okay, so we need just a little bit of stretch to get rid of these fingers a little bit. We don't have to fully get rid of them because they will push out. So let's get rid of some of them, but let's not overstretch the material. So we don't know how much stretch we need yet to get to the other side. Okay, so we've got this laid down, and now we can put a little stretch here because this has actually been stuck down. It will still want to pop up, but I can hold it down with my finger. Like that, and that's looking really good. And then we'll come right up here to this top part. So basically I'm just lining up this back here. That tells us right where the material needs to be. Let's get that over the edge, and it looks like it wants to continue to pop up, so I'm gonna go ahead and put just a little bit of tack in there, and we're gonna stick this down right now. Okay. gonna swipe over that edge. Let's see. Yeah, and then we'll just get all this down. Do a little slide chomp there on the very edge. Great. Let's go ahead and go over to the other side. Okay, we'll pull this back, make sure we don't have any pre-tacking. And then we're gonna go ahead and stretch this into place, and then we'll deal with the center. Okay, so again, I'm gonna make sure that this bottom tacks in place. Right with a nice tight seam there. We're gonna need just a little bit of tack right on that very edge. Okay, that feels pretty good. I'm off. By running my finger across it and back and forth, I can feel that there's a little gap up more towards the top. So I'm gonna pull that back a little bit, realign it, and then we're going to squeegee the area we put the tack in down. And now that should hopefully stay down, and we'll be able to realign the rest of this here. Alright, I'm going to put some tack in here as well. Go ahead and go up to right there, and then we'll take this out to the side here. Okay, get some more tack in here. Okay, this is hanging off a little bit on the back there. I'll have to come back and trim that off. Yeah, well, yeah, that's just hanging. It's off a little bit here, so let's actually pull that back and see if we can get this seam to line up a little bit better, and see if that helps with how much it's hanging over the back. I mean, if you have to trim it, then it doesn't really matter how much is hanging off, right? It's better if it's more than less, because less is harder to get a good trim on and get your finger on it to pull it away. All right, so I've got this, do have that lined up a little bit better on the seam here. And then we're gonna go ahead and tack that down. And then we should be able to take all the rest of this stuff back. All right, so when I pushed it, it bunched up the material a little bit right there, and the best way to get rid of that is to just go over with your finger, because you can get some real good pressure just on that one spot. Okay, great. Still hanging over, but lined up a little bit better on the actual seam here. Okay, now let's get to this area. We're gonna go ahead and put some slip on this again. And then we can get this lined up and squeeze it out. So right about there looks really good. Just holding this part that wants to pop up down with my hand, and then squeegeeing this stuff out. Now that we're down into that recess, we can go ahead and work our way up. And it looks like it's lined up really well, so we're just gonna go ahead and squeegee this out. Okay, let's see, this had some extra water in it. I think it was popping up a little. So I'm gonna put some tack in there, and then squeegee that back out, and that should help lock that bottom edge down in. Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and squeegee this out, and then we'll take the rest of this back here. Oop. There was some moisture trapped in there in an area where it had been stuck down all around it. So I went in and lifted that back up to release that moisture, and then we can go ahead and squeegee that back out. GoPro needs a battery. Okay. Make sure we didn't get any pre-tack in while we're changing the battery. And then we'll get this lined up on the back and squeegee it out. Okay, some fingers that keep popping back up there. So let's get the rest of this squeegee out and laid down. Okay, let's get some tack solution in these little fingers and then this edge. Great, now let's wrap this edge. All right, I've got a big water bubble right here. Let's try to get some tack in it on that edge, and we'll push it out. So it was coming this way, so I went with it and then pushed it up out. If you just go like this on it, it's because this part's probably stuck, it's just gonna bunch over, fold over on itself and crease, and then you're gonna be pulling up this whole section trying to fix that. Okay, I'm gonna start over here and just work our way across. Just doing a chomp here. Make sure you've got all the moisture out of this. That's where it's real easy to leave if the moisture is on those corners that bend like that. And because it's on a bend like that, it's hard to see the moisture in there. And obviously, if the water is out here in the middle, you know, you're gonna be able to see that when the light goes across it. You'll be able to see that there's a wave right there. But on this, it's gonna be really hard to see. So definitely wanna make sure you're really paying attention and get all that moisture out. I'm gonna push the center down, and then I'm gonna work my way back this way. Oh, look, I creased it over a little bit there. Just barely though. So what we'll do is I lifted it up and then we'll just push it back down. I tried to do a slide chomp there, but that's not working. So we'll just continue to do our chomp. Okay, then so I've got all that down. I'm going to do a slide chomp on it with a lot of extra pressure. So a lot of pressure. I don't know what you know, I don't have a pressure gauge on that, but it's a lot. Comparatively to when I'm chomping it down, I found a little water pocket right there. Just pulled that back up to release that water pocket, and then go ahead and squeegee that back down. Okay, that feels really good. right, so there's a lot of pressure on that. I was putting a lot of pressure when I'm doing that final slide chomp. You can hear how that squeegee is just really rubbing on that material. And now that's only, let's back up. All right, let's back up a little more. All right, so I can only put that pressure on the squeegee after this material is stuck down. If I'm trying to just do my first push out, you can't use pressure like that, because what's gonna happen is, because the material is still loose down here, it's gonna just start folding over on itself. And if you remember that line that I got back here, where it started to come up and I creased it over on itself a little bit, I think is what I said. That is the exact problem you're going to have when you use too much pressure in an area that isn't stuck down yet. So the first squeegees are more gentle, and then you're gonna get much more aggressive once you get the edges all stuck down. Okay. So I've got a little thing popping up here. I'm gonna go ahead and squeegee that out. And so you can see over that one, I just went a little bit slower as I went over it. And that puts a little bit of extra pressure in that one area on the adhesive, a little bit slower, and that helps it stay down. All right, terrific. Well, that's the process of installing paint protection film on this front bumper. I'm gonna go through and heat seal this bottom part and make sure everything is staying down, and that's gonna be it. Oh, and then I also have to put some paint protection film over the piece that goes over this, the tow hook cover. But we'll do, you know, I think that's pretty straightforward. So I'm gonna just end the video here. I appreciate you taking a look, like, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you on the next one.